Hey, good morning, Choice Residential. Hope your day's off to a wonderful start. So, the reality is, no real estate agent is perfect. We all make mistakes. Most of what I have learned and the systems I created came from mistakes, in fact, that I made in transactions. And so, I wanted to share some of these mistakes with you, maybe to show that I am also human. I've also made some of the same missteps that you might have made in your career, and hopefully some of the mistakes that I've made and that I can relay to you and share what I've learned from those mistakes will help prevent you from making them as well. But let me just jump into these. Some of these are humbling, but they're just, we're all human. So first one I'll share with you is first contract I ever wrote for a buyer. I actually forgot to include $2,000 in seller concessions. So we had increased the price. He was going to pay $99,000 for this townhome, but we increased it to 101 so that he could have $2,000 in seller concessions being paid for him. However, I forgot to actually write that in. So we get to closing, those concessions aren't there, and I wrote a check for that $2,000. Of course, my net commission was actually only $1,600. So I was in the whole $400 on that first transaction. So hard lesson to learn, but it was a good reminder to make sure I proofread the agreements, make sure I review them with the buyer before sending off for a signature, and make sure that we have all of the relevant and important terms covered correctly. So that was mistake number one. All right, another mistake I made, in fact, it was the first listing I ever took, not the first listing I ever sold, because this listing didn't sell. It eventually expired. But in trying to get this listing, which, by the way, this listing had expired, it was an expired listing that I got in my neighborhood. And in trying to get that listing, I promised the sellers that I would actually go mow the yard for them. They weren't living in that house anymore, so it was vacant. And so I told them I would take care of mowing it. And in my mind, I envisioned I would just push my mower down and mow it. But of course, this listing had it for 6 months, and it didn't sell. And eventually I was just tired of pushing the mower down. More and more time would pass between when I would mow the yard, the grass would get longer, and the seller wasn't real happy with me. So that was an important lesson, not to overpromise and underdeliver. Do the opposite, underpromise and overdeliver. But if you are going to make a promise, make sure you follow through on that. So think through the things you're promising. All right, another mistake I made, which was so silly, is I misreported the square footage in a listing. I had this house measured. It came in at 1,396 square feet. So I thought, well, 1,400 is going to look better online. Well, that was a mistake. Should have just reported the square footage as it was reported to me on the appraiser's measurement. Eventually, we went under contract, and the buyer's agent asked me for the square footage for the sketch. So I sent it to him, and he pointed out that it was 1,396, not 1,400, and it blew up and became this big issue. We were able to work through it. Everybody calmed down, but that was a lesson for me to not try to use my marketing prowess to say, well, it looks better at 1,400 than 1,396, and it's only 4 square feet. What's the big deal? The big deal is it was a misrepresentation of the actual square footage. Even if it was small, it doesn't matter that it was such a small percentage. We don't actually have a 5% leeway like some people think. The commission is not likely to come down on you for less than a 5% square footage difference, unless you intentionally misrepresented it, as I did. So important lesson there. Another situation, which is kind of unique, is that on a closing disclosure, one of my sellers' names was misspelled, and I didn't catch it. And so when the seller was reviewing the closing disclosure, they caught it, and they made the comment to me. They said, "What are we paying you for? If you aren't catching things like this, we have to catch them." Oh, wow, that's an overreaction to just a typo that I didn't even make. It was the attorney that made it. But the seller was actually right. We do get paid a lot of money, and I should have caught that. But that was a lesson for me to always review the address, the zip code, the names of all relevant parties, the date of settlement, all the information, not just the financials of the transaction, but everything on that closing disclosure that is not boilerplate pre-printed language. Make sure you are reviewing that for accuracy. 2 more situations here that I'll share with you. I once had a buyer fire me, so a buyer that I was attempting to work with. They fired me because they said I was not sending them all of the available listings. Well, that was a lesson to me because it's not that I was withholding any listings. It was that they were creating their own searches online using different criteria than what they had provided to me. So they would find houses for sale, think that I was just choosing not to send them those listings. They let that boil up inside of them for whatever other reasons were going on, and then decided not to work with me. But the lesson there was to always, when you are signing up new buyers and having that initial buyer consultation, to let them know, hey, if you're ever seeing houses online that are different from the ones I'm sending you, just let me know. Chances are you're using slightly different criteria, therefore resulting in different houses that are showing up in the search. Or it could be that the search you're seeing isn't updated. That house might be under contract already. It could be a manually entered for sale by owner. Whatever the case may be, if you ever see something on your search that you're not seeing on the one that I send to you, just simply let me know so I can do some research for you. But that gets out in front of the frustration that a buyer might have of thinking that their agent isn't sending them all available listings for some reason. And then the last one is early in my career, actually got to closing or at the closing table. And it turned out that the buyer had never lined up homeowners insurance. Now, today it seems crazy that we could have ever gotten to the closing table and the person didn't have insurance. There are more checks and balances on the lending side that would probably prevent that from happening. But what I realized in that moment, even though the buyer didn't blame me for it, I felt guilt that, man, I should have reminded this first time buyer to line up their homeowners insurance. Forget about the other parties, the lender and the attorney who maybe should have figured that out too in advance. We as agents are the ones that get paid more than any other party in the transaction. And so we have more responsibility on our shoulders. We are the ones that have the reins on everything that's happening. So we need to make sure that all the other components are doing their jobs. And that includes things like making sure that the buyer has insurance, making sure that they've scheduled utilities to be turned on, making sure they made preparations to have the money cash to close that they need. Yes, there are other people involved in the transaction that may be helping with some of these things, but it ultimately falls on our shoulders. It's why we make the big bucks. We have a lot of responsibility. So make sure you are always pointing the finger at yourself before pointing the finger at somebody else when it comes to delivering an amazing client experience. Hopefully some of these mistakes that I've made demonstrate not only that I'm human and that I also messed up along my career, and that it is okay to make those mistakes as long as you learn something from it, so that you can be better the next time. So anyway, hopefully, if nothing else, this was an interesting and enlightening call for you, or video for you. As always, if you need us, we're just a phone call away. So until next time, take care.